We
Sure.
are now recording.
Good morning, everyone, and I want to welcome you to the Monday, April 26th meeting of the MWPA Technical Advisory Committee. This will be a virtual meeting of the Technical Advisory Committee of the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority pursuant to Executive Order N-29-20 issued by the Governor of the State of California. There will not be a public location for participation in this meeting, but any interested members of the public can participate either by telephone or by using the dial-in information printed on this agenda. If any member of the public has requests for a reasonable modification or accommodation for accessing the meeting due to disability, please contact Mark Brown at marinwildfire.org or mbrown@marinwildfire.org. We'll call the meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Absolutely. Bolinas Fire.
Steve Marca, Bolinas Fire.
Thank you. San Rafael and Marinwood.
Gardner for both.
Central Marin. Fire.
Todd Lando and Ruben Martin representing Corte Madera and Larkspur.
Thank you for the correction. County Fire.
Jordan Reeser.
Kentfield Fire.
Larry Pissarro.
Muir Beach. Novato.
Lynn Osgood, Novato.
Sleepy Hollow. Southern Marin and Mill Valley.
Red Hilliard, both.
Thank you. Stinson Beach.
Jesse Perry.
Fairfax. Town of Ross.
Town of Ross is present, sir.
Thank you, sir. And I did get the new agenda fixed for you. Thank you for bringing that up. And the town of San Anselmo. We have 10 members present with a quorum.
Thank you, Mark. Item number 3, are there any agenda adjustments that anyone would like to make? Do you have any raised hands? Seeing none, we'll bring it back. Mark, for some reason, we didn't have a line on here for public comment. So we'll go ahead and start that. It's an opportunity to open this up to public comment. Comments can be made on items that are not on the agenda, and the committee is not, pursuant to the Brown Act, able to comment on any public comments. Do you have any members of the public that would like to speak?
And then as a reminder, you can press *9 to raise your hand. And after we give you permission to speak, *6 to mute or unmute. And I'm looking for raised hands. And we have one from Woody Elliott. And just Woody, please unmute yourself and
okay.
Feel free to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hey, this is just a process question. I guess I'm new to your this process, but I noticed there wasn't any agenda posted on the main website, and I just wanted to know what was going on with the meeting, and I still don't know what's going on. So maybe you can improve that for us, general public site folks. Thanks.
Just as a note, the agenda was posted on the MWPA website under meetings. If you scroll down to the advisory technical committee and look at today's date, you'll see the meeting was posted, and it was posted with more than 72 hours notice.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess. Okay. Thanks a lot. Sorry.
Yep, no problem.
Do we have any other members of the public who would like to speak?
And I see no further raised hands.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the committee. Moving to item number 4, the executive officer's report.
And I'll start off with a big thank you to everybody in the advisory technical committee. And also I know there's a lot of support staff at the member agencies that have been working hard, developing the local mitigation DSpace plans, as well as partnering within their core areas or the geographical areas for core projects. So thank you for all that hard work. At the executive committee and the board of directors meeting, I gave a presentation on the predictive fire services. I'm not going to give it today just because I want you guys to be able to focus on your work at hand. And I think you are well aware, but after 4 years of drought and then a rainy season and now re-entering into a drought pattern, it's pretty scary, the fuel conditions. And if you look at the 1,000-hour fuels, they were trending just below normal, and they were paralleling the typical drying out process of normal. But then with a very dry late spring, when we normally are getting some type of precipitation, the fuel moistures are plummeting much faster than what is normal. So fuel conditions don't look good throughout the state. The good news is there's not as much of a grass crop as we sometimes have, but in my opinion, based on what I've been seeing driving around different parts of the state, there's enough of a grass crop to make us be a little bit worried. Great news on the employment front. At the board of directors meeting, I announced hiring our planning and program manager. Her name is Ann Krelock. I cannot be more excited about who we were able to recruit and select. Her start date will be May 17th. She's going to be an integral partner for the operations committee and the advisory technical committee. And I'll be facilitating meetings with her and each of our member agencies. The goal is for her to meet with the ops representative and the advisory technical representative on, not a one-on-one, a one-on-two or a one-on-three type meeting with all of the member agencies. And I'll close out with our environmental consultants. We received 2 very well-written proposals from 2 highly regarded firms. They will be presenting at our next executive committee meeting on May 6th, I believe it is. Yeah, May 6th. And they've been asked to give a 10-minute presentation, and the executive committee will be asking them some follow-up questions, and we intend to approve who is receiving the award on the May Board of Directors meeting. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions you may have.
Seeing none, we'll go ahead and bring it back. Thank you, Mark. Thanks for that report. Moving on to item number 5, the consent calendar. The only item on the consent calendar would be the minutes from the April 8th, 2021 Technical Advisory Committee. Has everyone had an opportunity to take a look at the minutes? And if you do, and if you have any additions, corrections, or anything to the minutes, this would be the opportunity to voice them. Otherwise, if I can have a motion to approve the April 8th, 21 meeting minutes.
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Do we need to take a vote on this, Mark?
Yeah, we do. And so Belina Spire,
Aye.
Senator Fell,
Aye, sorry.
that's right. Larkspur,
Aye.
Corte Madera,
Aye.
County Fire,
Aye.
Kentfield,
Aye.
Nevada,
Aye.
Southern Marin,
Aye.
Cincy Beach,
Aye.
Town of Ross.
Aye.
Passes with 100%.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 6, committee reports. This is the reason why we had the meeting today, was to take a look at our work proposals for the areas of concern within our jurisdictions, and to take a look at what the core proposals will look like. I want to thank everyone for over the last few weeks working diligently on getting the information into us. All these work proposals have also been forwarded to the operations committee for their subcommittee to review the proposals. I can start it off by kind of showing what some of the core proposals are. For example, Central Marin core area submitted a work proposal for an environmental review and planning process for a shaded fuel break that were proposed to MWPA. And the shaded fuel break concept is creating that buffer zone between the undeveloped areas that surround our communities where most of the vegetation is located. So for example, within the central area, it would be a 200-foot shaded fuel break, removing all the invasive species, trying to return the area to a natural habitat that before, you know, all the broom and everything came in. So the 200-foot shaded fuel break would run basically from Horse Hill and then circumvent the entire jurisdiction all the way through Fairfax, between MWP, correct, excuse me, MMWD lands and open space lands and all the jurisdictions. So Fairfax, San Anselmo, Ross, Larkspur, Kentfield, the Kent Woodlands, Corte Madera would all be circumvented by this shaded fuel break. The other component of this work proposal is the shaded fuel break that would then surround the northern end of the central zone, which would go from basically the 101 corridor at the Centerfell, Green Bray divide, and then run all the way through Wolf Grade, and then the backside through Terra Linda, and then circumventing the Sleepy Hollow area. So you can almost look at it as a 200-foot band around your entire community. And the goal with that is to try to slow the progression of a fast-moving fire, to give us an opportunity to put resources in there to suppress the fire, and more importantly, allow our residents opportunity and time to evacuate when needed. So that's one proposal that we submitted.
Ruben, can I interrupt and give a little bit of a context for some of our members of the public, what we're accomplishing in today's meeting? As Ruben gave an example of, we're looking at brief verbal report to daylight our proposals for everybody to see at this point. And one of the things we're looking for is to bring alignment of these projects across the core areas and look for where there could be an opportunity to combine some projects that go across some of the geographical areas that we are. And we are still working on the core development process and aligning MWPA's process timing-wise with the process of our 17 local member agencies. We're out of sync with some of our local member agencies with the approvals that they have to go through with their boards or councils. So we're slowing down a little bit to make sure that we get the process done right. We'd rather see it done properly rather than getting it done quickly. So today is just an early preview for everybody, both in the advisory technical committee and in the public, just to give that brief verbal daylight of the projects we're working on.
Thanks for that clarification, Mark. Definitely helps with the explanation once we start giving our verbal reports. Any questions on the work proposal for Central Marin, on ideas that may assist your jurisdiction? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and I'll pull up, like Mark had mentioned, these are some high-level overviews of some of the proposals that were submitted. Like for example, Southern Marin, which covers, or the Southern Marin zone area, which covers Southern Marin, Mill Valley, Sausalito, areas of Marin County, Muir Beach. They're proposing to put in an LRAD system, which is your long-range acoustical device, which is your outdoor siren systems that would then be a component to their early evacuation and emergency notification system. So that's one component of a core project or core proposal that was submitted. Did you want to elaborate on that, Fred, at all?
Yeah, so, this goes in alignment with the MWPA's evacuation and notification. Mill Valley has already installed several sites. The long-range acoustical device is a siren, yet it also has voice. So you're able to do both a notification of evacuation plus give instructions on where to go. And these particular sites we wanted to bring into both the Southern Marin Fire District, which includes the city of Sausalito, but we'll also be able to hear it in Marin City as well. So it would go basically the entire southern portion of the area, less Tiburon. And I'm working with Mike right now on Tiburons. They're thinking about doing it on their own at this point.
Awesome. Thanks, Fred. Yeah, this is a great, at least in my opinion, a great example of how we can use Measure C funding because it meets the mission of emergency evacuation and notification systems and improving that. Definitely a good plan or proposal, Fred. Thank you. Another example of the southern zone is the heavily vegetated areas along Ridgecrest within the Throckmorton Ridge area, which is the unincorporated portions of Mill Valley, is creating shaded fuel breaks up there as well to try to remove some of the invasive species. So that's another example of a core proposal that was submitted. Let's see here, moving on. And then once again, Mill Valley also submitted a core proposal for a shaded fuel break between Mill Valley and the Southern Marin areas. And then again, it's just the removal of invasive species. So French broom, Scotch broom, any dead and down materials and so forth. And basically bringing health back to our local forests. Any questions so far? Then let's take a look at another area. The San Rafael area. Is there anyone in particular you'd like me to look at, Quinn, or talk about?
No, I mean, there's like 14 of them, but
Right.
a few of them are shaded fuel breaks, exactly like we were just talking about in strategic locations. Northern Lucas Valley area, which obviously impacts the north and central, kind of that touches a lot of zones right there. I think the ridge top has potential to tie into the initial project you mentioned for Central Marin, the southern San Pedro Mountain, and then some additional less vegetation projects also listed in there as well.
Perfect. Let's see here. Yeah, another area that, for example, San Rafael used as some core projects would be for your goat grazing and so forth. That also uses a less invasive mode of removing a lot of these unwanted species and creating those shaded fuel breaks.
Yeah, and if I'd add, I think we have a couple other projects in there that are building off some pilot projects that Fire Safe Marin led last cycle, if you will. So we want to really implement those red flag warning signage projects, those flip signs we thought were great, as well as expanded chipper days and some other things. So trying to take those pilots and figure out how we can expand them and fully implement them.
Yeah, perfect. And then I think what a lot of our zones have also took was the house out approach and then those fire adaptive community approach, basically looking at those defensible space areas within 100 feet of homes. I know within the central zone, and looking at yours here as well in the San Rafael zone, is where I concentrate a lot of our efforts on our primary and secondary evacuation routes. So making sure those are clear of unwanted and invasive species that are located along the roadways, and then making sure the canopies have been lifted in order to get emergency vehicles in and out of a particular area.
Sorry, real quick, Chief Martin, and
Yes.
maybe this is more a question for Mark, but one of the projects we put in was for direct assistance, which obviously is kind of dependent on if the MWPA as a whole comes up with a good grant or match program. But potentially the city would want to even expand that beyond, the MWPA, taking out a bigger portion of our core funding. So obviously some details to work out there, but I think there's a few projects that we've put in as zone core projects, but potentially are full MWPA projects that, depending on how that plays out.
Great point, Quinn. And that is one of my goals today, to find out where we have similar projects like this, and perhaps we can combine them, because the MWPA is looking to have 2 grant type programs for residents. And if we can wrap them up into one, that would be great. Or if a jurisdiction decides that they want to expand upon it, they can do that as well.
Yeah, there were several agencies also submitted proposals for expanding defensible space grants to provide that funding for our homeowners through the core projects. And so a lot of the West Marin zones are offering those proposals for home hardening grants. And then there's also West Marin's also submitting a proposal for consideration for evacuation routes. And that would cover Ballina, Stinson, Nicasio, and Inverness volunteer fire departments, and make sure that everyone in West Marin is covered under the core proposals. So that's kind of a little bit of what's going on within each area. At this point, I'd like to go ahead and open it up. Would it be appropriate for questions for the group before we open up to public comment?
Ruben, do you want to talk about what some of the Novato projects as well?
Sure. Let me pull that one up. Yeah, so Lynn's got a couple projects that she's got here. Let's see, she's got 7 core proposals that she's submitting, or areas of concern in her area. So they're providing additional chipper days, asking for review on that. They want to work on some city open space parcels to try to remove invasive species and create those shaded fuel breaks. Provide funding for 80 homeowners associations to create fire resilient defensible space zones around their homes. Maintain their primary and secondary evacuation routes, and then improve red flag signages along them. Maintain a 100-foot shaded fuel break around structures in the city of Novato's open space. Assist with a grazing program within the Marin Valley Senior Mobile Home Park, and then remove dense vegetation to enhance primary and secondary evacuation routes, both in the local responsibility areas and the state responsibility areas. So there's some of their core projects or proposals that they've submitted. So it almost seems like we're all kind of in line of where we're headed, or at least all on the same page of looking at the house out approach, assisting homeowners with defensible space grants, providing funding for the removal of vegetation, and some areas or some jurisdictions are even putting the home hardening grants as part of core proposals. Another one here within the Central Marin area, because we've been bolstering our defensible space programs. We submitted a proposal for assistance with providing some of software development as a core funding, to where we can capture all the metrics both before and after a home's been evaluated. And then that can be uploaded onto the CAL FIRE's collector app. So that way, all that information can also be collected at the state level. With that, I'll turn it back over and see if we have any questions from the committee. Seeing none, I'd like to go ahead and open this up, an opportunity to open it up to the public for any comments.
And looking for raised hands. And before we open up for public comment, just a reminder that this is a very early preview of a flavor of the projects. As we refine our process and get in alignment with our local member agencies, these will be vetted in a public forum with the project proposal forms visible to everybody. But we just need to slow down a little bit, get our process in alignment, and we're provided for much more transparency than we had last year. So that's why we're having this step of this this verbal vetting of the projects. And we do have 2 hands raised at this time. And David Long, please unmute yourself and speak.
Yeah, my name is David Long. I represent FERN, which is the Fire and Environmental Resilience Network. It consists of the Marin Audubon Society, the California Native Plant Society Marin Chapter, and Environmental Action Committee of West Marin. First, I want to say we're pleased that much of the information that we identified as needed for adequate environmental review has been added to this year's project forms. That's a significant improvement over the forms used for last year. So we really want to thank the committee and all those who worked to make those forms much improved for this year. We do have a concern, though, about the process. It's our understanding that because funds for environmental reviews are to be included in project grants, that agencies will not be expected to provide all the environmental information specified on the form when the project is submitted to your committee. And that so the environmental information is likely to be incomplete, and that your committee will not be able to make a determination about the adequacy of environmental review at the time that you review projects. So that, as with last year's projects, we anticipate, and I hope I'm wrong about this, but this is our understanding, that projects will be approved subject to future environmental review and approval. And we found this problematic last year, and we still, if it happens, would find it problematic this year. And the reason is that the only chance for public input on MWPA projects, including agency projects, that we know of is hearings before MWPA committees and the board. And that the committee and board approval of projects without environmental review means that there's really no opportunity for public participation concerning the environmental issues raised by the projects. So that if review becomes a purely administrative matter. Now, environmental documents may be available to the public, but not necessarily in time for meaningful public input. So we would urge MWPA to make it possible for environmental review to take place when your committee reviews projects. There may be several options that we've thought of for doing them. There may be more. Now that the MWPA has environmental staff, and hopefully in the near future we'll have a consultant, we would hope that they would be made available to members to assist with obtaining needed environmental information. Another alternative might be to provide advanced grants for this purpose, or require agencies to advance their own funds subject to reimbursement with project grants. As I said, there may be other options, but we believe that an opportunity for meaningful public input is as important for environmental review of projects as for other aspects of projects that your committee considers. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, David. And we have one more hand raised from Woody. Woody, please unmute yourself and begin.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, very interesting comments, David. Thanks very much about hearing that. I'm sorry, I'm out here in Inverness and looking at a lot of potentially flammable landscape ahead of me, and so are my neighbors. And we understand that our IPUD, Inverness Public Utilities District, is probably going to be using core funds or funds that come to it for evacuation route mitigation, or opening up areas to facilitate evacuations. But I'm also just curious about the process for future projects. You enumerated several core projects throughout Marin County, but I'm unfamiliar with where I might find out how, say, IPUD, Inverness Public Utilities District, could propose a project to be funded, such as creating shaded fuel breaks around the perimeter of our area, particularly in conjunction with state parks and National Park Service. Is there any kind of written protocols for working through your process to get, say, core project funding for maybe not this fiscal year, it seems to be a little late for that, but subsequent fiscal years?
And I'll briefly respond to that. And the Inverness Fire is working closely with County Fire and all the other West Marin agencies for core proposals. And if you as a resident have suggestions, your point of contact is through Inverness Fire, and then they can take those suggestions, wrap them up into a core proposal or a local mitigation proposal and process them through the system. But there are projects being proposed for Inverness, I can assure you of that. But your first point of contact is with your local fire authority. Usually, or we like that process because our fire agencies have that up close and personal relationship with their communities as opposed to the MWPA, and it is the member agencies that drive the core projects and local mitigation projects. So thank you for reaching out, Woody.
Well, just to follow up, is there a process written down somewhere that I can refer to and perhaps educate my fellow neighbors and other members of the iPod board?
I've sent emails along those lines to several Inverness residents, but if you reach out to Jim Fox, I think he'd be able to provide you some information that I've provided to him in writing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And just for clarification, Mark, we do have a proposal in for the West Zone as part of a core project to improve evacuation routes within Inverness.
Thanks for that clarification. And looking for any further hands raised from the public, and we have none.
Okay, I think we've got a hand raised from Quinn.
Chief, I was just wondering if any of the projects, or if all the projects were focused kind of on public land and public right-of-ways, or if there were any kind of private projects, whether that's HOAs, large landholders, just private entities, and just kind of what the general thinking was around using core funding for more private landowner kind of projects, larger landowner.
Did you want to tackle that, or if not, I can do something we've done here locally. What we ended up doing last year, Quinn, was use local funds and identified it was a privately owned, undeveloped, large parcel that impacted probably 80 or 90 homes. So we went ahead and partnered with the homeowners association to similar to almost like a voluntary abatement grant, to where we, I believe, shared 50% of the cost to remove all of the underbrush and broom and basically restore and the habitat in that area. And that's one component of doing it. I view it as one parcel can impact an entire community, you know, whether the embers land on that parcel during a major fire or not. And we all know who those, typically in the neighborhood, what parcels those are. Do you want to add anything to that, Mark?
No, I think your description, the project that you use as the comparison is excellent. It shows a partnership with private entities, and I do feel that this is in alignment with the language of the MWPA. If you can show a benefit to the entire community through the work and a partnership with a private landowner, especially a large private landowner, or maybe multiple smaller private landowners, completely in alignment.
Thanks, Mark.
Hey, Ruben, this is Jordan. Can I make a comment or fill in? Hey, I think, you know, a situation that's very typical in some of our West Marin communities is a lot of unincorporated areas is the non-county maintained roads that are, you know, in essence, private or paper roads that don't have county funds. So Quinn, you know, that's one from a perspective of emergency equipment egress as well as community evacuation. We're looking at a lot of different places throughout West Marin doing work on private roadways that service, and, you know, not private driveways, but private roadways that serve communities and are important for us getting access during a fire event. And I guess maybe some clarification, Mark, we can follow up as we develop these processes, but, you know, just the term supplanting and where we put that, you know, Quinn's comment or question, I was really under the impression, and I don't need to vet this out here, but that, we're not supposed to be, in essence, be using MWPA funds on, for example, county maintained roads to do the work that county is supposed to be doing on those maintained roads. So we were actually looking for areas that were outside of government responsibilities where we could really get the most bang for our buck. So we were actually, adding on to the capacity within our zone and not kind of supplanting the work that was supposed to already be happening.
When it comes to vegetation management along the roadways, whether they're county or city maintained, it would be appropriate to use MWPAs for the veg management, but not necessarily improving the road infrastructure.
Okay, that's understood. And we can follow up offline with some of that, Mark. I guess just, as potential cities, towns, counties, look to then, utilize MWPA funds to do work that they, traditionally would have done, right? If it's grass mowing, if it's clearance of brush where they may have a history of doing, and then they see the MWPA opportunities. Oh, great. Now we can use these funds to take care of that work that we've always done and are expected to do.
And your point's well taken. It would be above and beyond what has been traditionally been done.
Yep.
If I can maybe just clarify that. So I think that's a really interesting kind of question. And I think roadways and large private landholders, I would kind of view a little bit separately, just from a functionality standpoint. But does subplanting, or does that apply to private landowners that we'd be partnering with? So take HOA private land. They have a responsibility to that land. They've historically had a responsibility to that land. They've done some type of maintenance. Is it the same idea of above and beyond? Or is it subplanting period to be supporting them in their responsibility of that land management?
I think it would be above and beyond what they would normally have done.
Okay.
Because typically our HOA only did maybe about 20 feet around their homes, but everyone above them, which was about 80 homes on a hillside, were impacted. So for us, we went above and beyond, which then was able to protect a lot more of the community.
And then, sorry to have so many questions about this, but then
Okay.
I think, you mentioned using local funds, which last year, granted, was kind of the only funds we had available. And so I guess maybe the question to Mark is, do we see these types of partnerships as core functions, or going back to the local agency to make those decisions? And is there a standard of match? So if we're working with a private landowner, that it should always be a match versus a complete MWPA project?
So question number one, it could be both core or local mitigation, depending on how you slice it. And we are still working on how we determine matches. And I rarely is there a one size fit all type solution. And I don't know if we want to force people, the 17 member agencies, into a one size fits all solution when it comes to matching.
Thanks.
Mark, Jesse here with a question from Stinson.
Go ahead, Jesse.
So we have some local projects that we're wanting to do in the GGNRA area around town here. And I know there's probably some other projects in GGNRA with the core funds from the rest of the areas. Is there any way we can kind of group our efforts as to align maybe just within our area or within other areas to allow GGNRA to kind of have one kind of point of contact for a lot of the proposals that are going on? Or are we going to be responsible for communicating with GGNRA separately?
For core, it'll, our point of contact will be myself and our new planning program manager and pre-lock, and that'll be with Greg Jones from GGNRA. But when it comes to the local mitigation projects, if you're partnering with the GGNRA or Point Reyes National Seashore, then it would be within the local agency.
Copy that. Yeah, I know they're going to be doing a lot of environmental compliance reviews, so I didn't know if we could all pool our resources together in that, but that answers the question. Thank you.
Any other questions and or comments from the group? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 7. Any informational items from committee members that they'd like to pass along to the rest of the group?
some good news, especially for all of our members of the public. We're in our last week was our first full week of training with our seasonal team, and they are out and about doing some hands-on learning out in the field this week. And it's just super exciting to be able to expand our defensible space program and know that one-on-one education opportunities are going to go a long way. So my good news for the day.
Awesome. Thanks, Gwen. Okay. Moving on to item number 8. Are there any members of the committee that would like to request any future agenda items for any future meetings? I am not seeing any raised hands. We will take it back to item number 9, which is this basically concludes the April 21st meeting, or 26th meeting, excuse me. All my days are run together. April 26th meeting of the Advisory Technical Committee of the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Do we need to take public comment on any of those last few items?
I don't.
No, we did our public comment on the committee reports, and for information and agenda items, we do not need to.
Is that a motion to adjourn, Jordan?
It was, yeah, sorry. Just unmuting and raising my hand at the same time.
I'll second that motion.
Thanks, Quinn. Thank you, everyone, on getting together in such a short amount of time. Like Mark had mentioned, we are refining the processes, and we will keep everyone abreast of what happens next and how we move forward. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
great day, everybody.